Today, we're talking about kids, kids, who committed crimes so horrific, they shook entire countries and left people asking, how could a child do that? We're covering 3 cases: John Venables and Robert Thompson, Amarjeet Satta, and Mary Bell. These are real, gut-wrenching stories, so viewer discretion is advised, especially since we're talking about young victims and some truly awful details. I've done my homework to keep this accurate, sticking to what we know from reliable sources. If you're ready for a wild ride, stick around and let me know in the comments what you think about these cases. Let's get started with one of the most infamous crimes in British history. It's February 12, 1993, in Liverpool, England. 2 10-year-old boys, John Venables and Robert Thompson, decide to skip school. Now, kids ditching class isn't exactly headline news, but what these two did next, it's the stuff of nightmares. This is the story of how they took the life of 2-year-old James Bulger, a case that still haunts the UK. Venables and Thompson grew up in rough parts of Liverpool. Both came from troubled homes. Venables' parents were split, and he was often neglected, bouncing between them with little stability. Thompson, one of 7 kids, had a mom who struggled with heavy drinking, and their household was chaotic. Neither boy was exactly thriving. School reports described Venables as disruptive and Thompson as withdrawn. But nothing could have prepared anyone for what they'd do. That day, the boys headed to the New Strand shopping center in Bootle. They wandered around, messing about, trying to nick small stuff. Typical kid antics, right? Wrong. At some point, they spotted James Bulger, a toddler shopping with his mom, Denise. James was just 2, full of energy, toddling around. As any parent knows, you can't watch your kid every second. In one moment, Denise glanced away, and that's when Venables and Thompson made their move. They approached James, likely coaxing him with something innocent sounding, and led him out of the shop. Nobody batted an eye. 2 kids with toddler. Most people assumed they were siblings or just playing. The boys walked James 2.5 miles across Liverpool, passing dozens of people. A few noticed James looked upset, even crying. But when questioned, Venables and Thompson said he was their brother or a lost kid they were helping. According to witness statements from the 1993 trial, at least 38 people saw them but didn't intervene. It's chilling to think how close they came to being stopped. Now, here's where things get really heavy. Viewer discretion. Seriously. The boys took James to a secluded railway line near Walton and Anfield Station. There, they tortured him. Court records confirm they threw stones and bricks at him, beat him, and poured paint into his eyes. James, just a 2-year-old, suffered 42 injuries, including a fatal head wound likely from being dropped or struck. Finally, they placed his body on the tracks, hoping a train would make it look like an accident. A train did hit James, but pathologists later confirmed he was already dead from the earlier injuries. When James didn't come home, Denise was frantic. Police launched a search, but with no leads, they were grasping at straws. 2 days later, on February 14th, 1993, James' body was found on the tracks. At first, investigators thought the injuries might be from the train, but the autopsy revealed the brutal truth. This was no accident. The breakthrough came when CCTV footage from the shopping center showed 2 young boys leading James away. The public was floored. Everyone expected an adult predator, not kids. On February 20th, 1993, Venables and Thompson were arrested. During questioning, Venables broke down, crying, though it's unclear if it was guilt or fear of being caught. Thompson was eerily calm, barely reacting. The trial in November 1993 was a media storm. At just 10 years old, they were tried as adults for murder, unprecedented for kids that young in the UK. Both were convicted and sentenced to detention at Her Majesty's pleasure, meaning an indefinite term, though they'd be eligible for release under strict conditions. Here's where it gets controversial. In 2001, after serving 8 years in secure children's units, Venables and Thompson were released at age 18 with new identities to protect them from public backlash. The decision sparked outrage. How could kids who did something so horrific walk free so soon? Venables didn't help his case. He was recalled to prison in 2010 and again in 2017 for possessing child abuse material, serving short sentences each time. Thompson, as far as public records show, has stayed out of trouble and lives quietly under his new identity. This case raises tough questions. Can kids that young be evil? Or were they products of broken homes and a society that failed them? Next up, we head to a small village in India to talk about Amajit Sada, an 8-year-old boy who's often called one of the youngest serial killers ever. Now, I'm not throwing that label around lightly. We're sticking to the facts here. And trust me, they are chilling enough on their own. Amajit Sada was born in 1998 in Begusarai, a tiny village in Bihar, India. Think remote, tight-knit, where everyone knows everyone. His family was dirt poor. His dad scraped by as a laborer, and life was tough. They lived hand-to-mouth, like many in the area, but there's no evidence Amajit was abused or neglected in the way we saw in the last case. Still, something was deeply wrong with this kid, and nobody saw it coming until it was too late. In 2007, when Amajit was just 8, he committed his first known killing. The victim, his own 6-month-old cousin. According to police reports from the time, Amajit lured the baby away from family, maybe while they were distracted, and killed her. How exactly? Reports say he strangled or beat her, though details are scarce because, well, it's a small village with limited records. Here's the kicker. The family didn't report it. Why? Some sources suggest shame or fear of stigma in their close-knit community, but we don't know for sure. What we do know is that Amajit faced no consequences, and that's where things spiral. A few months later, Amajit struck again. This time, it was his own baby sister, less than a year old. Again, he took her away from the family's watch and killed her in a similar way. Reports point to strangulation or blunt force. And again, his parents stayed silent. Can you imagine? 2 infants gone, and nobody says a word to the authorities. It's hard to wrap your head around, but in a place with little access to law enforcement or mental health support, maybe the family felt they had no options. Still, it's heartbreaking to think about. Then came the third victim, and this one couldn't stay hidden. In mid-2007, Amajit targeted a neighbor's 6-month-old daughter. The baby's mother left her briefly unattended, possibly at a local school or community spot. Details are fuzzy, but it was a place people trusted. Amajit saw his chance, took the baby to a secluded area, and killed her. When the body was found, the village erupted. Locals started piecing things together, and suspicion fell on Amajit because he'd been seen nearby. When confronted by police, he confessed not just to this murder, but to all 3. According to India Today's 2007 coverage, he admitted everything calmly. No tears, no apparent guilt, which stunned the officers. An 8-year-old confessing to 3 murders? That's unheard of. Police in Bihar had never dealt with anything like this. India's legal system didn't make it easy, either. At the time, kids under 18 couldn't be charged with murder, so Amajit wasn't sent to a regular prison. Instead, he was placed in a juvenile detention facility, or what they call a children's home in India, because juvenile records are sealed. We don't know much about what happened next. Some reports say he was released at 16, around 2015, but there's no public trace of him today. He could be out there, living quietly. Or not. It's a creepy thought, right? We're going back to 1968 in Newcastle, England, to talk about Mary Bell, an 11-year-old girl who did things most people can't even imagine. This story is wild, and it's got layers: abuse, tragedy, and a trial that had everyone talking. Mary Bell was born on May 26, 1957, in a rough part of Newcastle. Her mom, Betty, was a sex worker who struggled with mental health and wasn't exactly winning any parenting awards. Court records and Mary's later accounts suggest Betty was abusive, physically and emotionally, neglecting Mary and sometimes leaving her with strangers. Mary's dad? Unknown. Growing up in that kind of chaos left scars, and by age 10, Mary was already acting out, known in the neighborhood as troubled but not dangerous. Or so people thought. On May 25, 1968, The day before her 11th birthday, Mary committed her first crime. She lured 4-year-old Martin Brown, a kid from her neighborhood, into an abandoned house in Scotswood. There, she strangled him to death. No weapons, no witnesses, just a little girl and a lifeless toddler. Kids found Martin's body soon after. But here's the crazy part. Police initially thought it was an accident. There were no obvious signs of violence, and who'd suspect an 11-year-old girl of murder? The case was closed, temporarily. But Mary wasn't done. Just 2 months later, on July 31st, 1968, she struck again, this time with a friend, Norma Bell. No relation, just a weird coincidence. Their victim was 3-year-old Brian Howe, another local kid. Mary and Norma lured Brian to a wasteland, where Mary strangled him. But it didn't stop there. According to trial records, Mary went further, mutilating Brian's body with scissors, cutting his hair, scratching his legs, and carving an M into his stomach. It's the kind of detail that makes your skin crawl. Between the murders, Mary and Norma got reckless. They broke into a nursery and trashed it, leaving notes scrawled on walls like, "I murder so that I may come back, and we did murder Martin Brown." Police thought it was just kids being vandals. Nobody took it seriously as a confession. Big mistake. After Brian's body was found, things changed fast. The mutilation screamed murder, and police started asking questions. Mary couldn't keep quiet. She started acting odd, asking neighbors if they missed Brian, even showing up at his house to see him. She made creepy comments to police, like saying she knew where Brian was last seen. Kids in the neighborhood mentioned seeing Mary and Norma with Brian that day. And soon, both girls were brought in for questioning. Mary tried to pin it all on Norma, but police saw through her. Norma cracked under pressure, spilling details, while Mary stayed cool, almost calculating. On August 7th, 1968, Mary Bell, age 11, was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. The trial in December 1968 was a circus. The public was torn, horrified by the crimes but confused about how to judge a kid. Prosecutors argued Mary knew exactly what she was doing, pointing to her calm demeanor and the deliberate mutilation. The defense said she was a product of her abusive upbringing, with a psychologist testifying she had a psychopathic personality disorder, meaning she struggled to feel empathy. In the end, Mary was convicted of manslaughter, not murder, due to her mental state. Norma was acquitted, seen as less culpable. Mary was sentenced to detention at Her Majesty's pleasure, basically an indefinite term for a juvenile. She served 12 years in various secure facilities, getting therapy and education. In 1980, at age 23, she was released with a new identity to shield her from the public. Can you imagine the uproar? A child killer walking free, starting over like nothing happened? But the story doesn't end there. In 1998, Mary co-authored a book, Cries Unheard, with journalist Gitta Sereni, detailing her abusive childhood and claiming it shaped her actions. The book caused a storm. Victims' families were furious, calling it a cash grab. It raised big questions. Can someone like Mary be rehabilitated? Was she a monster or a victim of her circumstances? And that's it, folks. 3 cases that'll stick with you. If you're still reeling, check out my other videos for more true crime stories. There's plenty more where this came from. Hit that subscribe button, share your thoughts below, and I'll see you next time. Stay safe out there.